Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana. Thanks for tuning in today. Well, Financial Issues is a ministry whose main goal is to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. We hope you're a partner with us. If you're not, find out more about that at financialissues.org, because we are a listener and partner-supported ministry. Our main goals are to defund darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy, where we screen out the companies in corporate America from our portfolios who are funding an ungodly agenda. The things like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, human rights violations, and so much more. We also encourage you to fund the light, to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver. So on today's show, we are going to answer some of the questions that you guys have been sending in. And in the next part of the show, my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell will be back with us to discuss a topic that most people avoid, like they avoid their liberal, God-hating neighbor.
Wise things, right?
Almost didn't say that. I can almost hear the comments, not every liberal hates God, but, in reality, if you examine the causes that they support, they are very anti-Christ and enmity. I just said it.
What's the verse? Friendship with the world is enmity with God.
Friendship with the world is enmity with God.
Yep.
So there we go. All right, so don't email me. And we'll get encouragement from the scriptures, John 15 and 13, which we will start with today as sort of a carryover from the Memorial Day holiday. So we hope that if you had time off, you enjoyed it, and that you'll enjoy the scripture. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one friend." Man, I'm stumbling over my words today.
You got this, Shana. No way.
So, as we observed Memorial Day over this long weekend, I hope that we reflected on the truth of this verse in a profound and sobering way. So this was the day that we remember, and we should have more than just a day, as Seth mentioned before. But this is a day that we remember the brave men and women of our armed forces who made the ultimate sacrifice. They laid down their lives, not for recognition or reward, but for the freedoms that you and I enjoy. Thanks to the sacrifices of those who gave their lives, we honor them on Memorial Day. And these freedoms are foundational to both American life and biblical principles of human dignity. Freedom is sacred and it's precious, and freedom has never been free. There are several key freedoms that we enjoy and hopefully never take for granted in this country because they came with great price. The freedom of religion. We can worship God openly. We can read the Bible. We can gather for church, and we can live out our faith without fear of government persecution. At least now that we're past the COVID era. So this is a freedom that not everyone in the world enjoys. We also have the freedom of speech. We can speak the truth. We can share the gospel. We can express our beliefs and challenge our leaders without being silenced. This freedom protects open dialogue, dissent, and spiritual witness. Many of those who died defending the freedom for you and I to say what we believe may very well have not shared that same belief at all. But they believed so much in our right to be able to say it that it was worth dying for. We also enjoy freedom of the press. We can access information, we can spread biblical truth, and we can hold those in power accountable because the government cannot legally control or censor our media. They even have the right to be fake news if they want to, but they should choose to do better. And we still have the freedom to come to our own conclusions when we can find fair, balanced, and complete coverage of news. We have the freedom to assemble. We can gather peacefully for worship, prayer, or even protest. That is vital to the freedom that we enjoy in this country for church and for civic life. A freedom that we almost lost during the pandemic when the churches were shut down, when the government told us which places were essential. We got a taste of what it was like not to have that freedom, and we didn't like it. We also have the freedom to vote and participate in government. We have a voice in our laws and in our leaders. This enables us to support policies that align with our faith and steward our influence wisely. Again, we got a glimpse at what it might look like if we didn't have our this way of life, and how this way of life could be completely changed forever if we can't hold on to free and fair elections. We have economic freedom in this country. The American dream is something that is highly coveted by many around the world, and many are willing to give up their own lives to try to get here. We saw that happen with our open borders over the last 4 years. So we can work, we can build businesses, we can manage resources, we can accumulate private property, and we can choose to do it in a way that honors God, and hopefully we will, and hopefully you will be encouraged to do just that by listening to this program. We have the freedom to give generously, to support ministries, and to provide for our families. And we enjoy so many personal liberties. We are free to make decisions about our own lives, our own families, and our own futures. We're free to follow God's calling for our lives and to live responsibly under His authority rather than under the state's authority. Make no mistake, these freedoms founding fathers. God is the author and giver of life. God is the one who gives us our free will, the freedom to choose, and ultimately freedom from death, sin, and the grave. These freedoms are not perfect, and they're not guaranteed on this earth and in this world's system. In fact, they are constantly under attack. So they must be protected, they must be stewarded well, and they must be defended. Above all, we should remember them and recount them to future generation. That is what Memorial Day was for. It was a time to reflect on the high cost of liberty and to thank God for the rights He gave us and for those who paid the ultimate price so that we could live not only in freedom, but in faith. The sacrifices of our fallen soldiers, who not only spoke them, but lived them. Jesus laid down His very life so that we could be free eternally. Memorial Day gave us the sacred opportunity to honor those who followed a similar path of sacrificial love here on earth. May we never forget their courage. May we live in a way that is worthy of their sacrifice, and may we always point back to the one who first showed us. Seth, you want to add anything?
I love it, Shana. I love the words you had to say there. It was great. You know, this day reminds us of the difference between the two world systems at play. You have the evil world system and the true Christian worldview. The evil world system just says your life for mine. It's selfish, looking out for number one. It's interesting, you know, we're in this preborn campaign, Shana, come to the end of it here, and we can see this clearly in the abortion industry. Oftentimes a baby's life is taken away in the womb for any number of reasons. Most of the time it's because of the convenience of the mother. It's because the mom perhaps feels pressured, or maybe she feels it within herself that she needs to work, she needs to have her own freedom, and so the baby gets killed. That ethic is on full display there. The Christian worldview is markedly different. The ethic is my life for yours, where we willingly lay down our lives in every way that we can. It might be being called to actually die for someone, but it might also just be everyday sacrifices that we make for the people in our midst. That's what we do, and we do this because our Lord first modeled it for us. So I do hope that as we're still hopefully celebrating the many lives that have been lost, and more remembering them as well, that we would think hard about what Jesus has done for us and try to do the same also.
Yeah. And that's a great lead in to asking you guys to support our Mother's Day preborn campaign. We've just got the rest of this week left, so if you haven't contributed, we hope that you will consider doing that. Would you make a small sacrifice? Nothing compared to the sacrifices that those have given their lives for this country, but would you forgo maybe that pair of shoes that you wanted to buy this month, or those 5 cups of premium coffee that you were going to spend your money on? Would you make a small sacrifice so that an ultrasound can be paid for, so that a mother can hear the life-saving words, choose life for her baby, and maybe even eternal life for herself? You can find out more information by going to financialissues.org and click on that preborn banner. Well, folks, I hope that you're going to stick around. I've got Jason MacDowell, my friend and colleague, who's going to join us for the next part of the show, and we're going to talk about estate planning. So speaking of the day that we die, we want to be prepared for that as well and consider it a stewardship opportunity. Stick around. We'll be back with more financial issues.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
I remember my life before I met Jesus. I was most of the time afraid. I remember one of my teachers gave the classroom an invitation for Crossroads. When they talked to me about the love of God, I felt a sort of peace in my heart. I will commit myself to learn more about God's Word, to be able to share the gospel to others.
To help reach more kids like Louise with the life-changing hope of the gospel, visit reachOurSchools.com.
Each May, we celebrate Mother's Day and the gift that mothers are to us. This May, you can help make motherhood possible by supporting Preborn. Preborn partners with clinics across the country, providing free ultrasounds and sharing the hope of Jesus Christ with women who are abortion-minded. When you give to Preborn, you're giving these women a chance to choose life. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give today. That's preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us. Well, yesterday Seth mentioned that it's sort of a shame that we only have one day to remember Memorial Day when we used to have a whole month to celebrate sexual deviancy with Pride Month. So hopefully that's my Pride Month dread would have already started to kick in by now, but it hasn't yet, and I'm hoping that it won't be bad. But I've got my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell back to join in with us, so we're going to extend the Memorial Day holiday just a little bit longer. Jason, you want to share your thoughts?
Absolutely. So Memorial Day, I thought this was interesting. Originally called Decoration Day, began after the Civil War as a way to honor those who died serving in the U.S. military. It was initially focused on decorating the graves of Union soldiers, but it expanded to include those who died in all wars. So the holiday was officially recognized as a federal holiday in 1971, but then moved to the last Monday in May, which we celebrate. The U.S. Census Bureau reports that over 1.3 million Americans have died in military service since the Civil War. So although this is an impossible number to be accurate on, is why we have the tomb of the unknown soldier and a president that knows where it's at. So I thought this would be a good time to speak on the estate planning of people and kingdom heirs.
That's a great tie-in, and grateful that we have a president who knows where the tomb of the unknown soldier is. So, one of the greatest rights that we have in this country is to actually be able to own and accumulate private property. That is something that not every person in every country enjoys. And before we begin to do estate planning, though, we need to first recognize that we don't actually own anything. It all belongs to the creator of the universe and is sort of on a long-term lease to us. So, this belief that God owns it all and we're just stewards of it is foundational to our worldview, and it changes everything when we start from this perspective. So let's start from the beginning. What is estate planning?
Estate planning is a process that involves arranging for the management and distribution of an individual's assets and properties, both during their lifetime and after their death. So estate planning is most often thought of as only being contained in legal documents like a will or an entity like a trust, but this can be true. Although can be true, what I want to focus on, though, is through beneficiary designation. So simple glance at probate versus non-probate assets are non-probate assets are those that have a beneficiary designation. A trust bypasses probate as well, while a will only dictates to probate court how assets are to be divided according to those legal documents. So I want to focus on the non-probate assets regarding beneficiary designation on accounts.
So, that's one of the things that we talk with our clients about a lot, because, a lot of times people will get online to the legal services or go down to their local attorney, and they think that once they've got their will, they can just throw it in a drawer and all is good and they don't have to do anything else. But oftentimes they overlook even the simpler things that they can do that are free and don't really cost them a lot of time or money, and that is to make sure that they have all of their beneficiaries named. So these non-probate assets are things like your retirement plan at work, your 401k, your 403b, life insurance, annuities if you have those. Those major IRAs, both Roth and traditional. So the first thing that you can do that doesn't cost you any time or money is to make sure that you have something listed, because if you don't, then it's going to default to your will. And if you don't have a will, then the state that you live in gets to decide by its laws where your stuff goes. So back to the idea that God owns it all. Proper estate planning begins with this one question. God, what do you want me to do with your stuff when I don't need it anymore? So, Jason, talk about the three kinds of beneficiaries: people, the kingdom, and that unintended beneficiary.
Yeah, right. So we'll start with people heirs. A first recommendation, of course, is to make sure that you have beneficiaries on those items that Shana pretty much listed: the life insurance, your bank accounts. You can even have beneficiaries on your vehicles through the DMV. That's always something that bypasses a lot of clients that we talk to. I've done it in the multiple states I've lived in. It's great to have a beneficiary there, then doesn't get caught up with anything in probate court. So also to discuss your plan with your attorney for all legal advice. So the attorneys will give the legal advice there. We've often spoken about moving money from qualified accounts to non-qualified or another tax advantage account like a Roth, called Roth conversion. So there actually is a bookend to all of the estate planning based off of that other holistic planning we like to look at. So the reason would be for the benefit of people heirs from a mitigated tax consequence focal point. So we're looking at mitigating Uncle Sam and how we can do that in our planning. So looking at the taxable brokerage account, when the owner or owners in a joint account pass, the beneficiaries receive what is called the step-up basis. This means that the cost basis is brought to the date of death. So if there is a liquidation and distribution to the beneficiaries, then this mitigates capital gains, if any. Of course, consult with your tax professional to review these things and how they would happen as well, so that you can cover the tax consequences. Roth accounts are qualified, which means that the government can change the rules on them. We know that. We've mentioned that several times. And also good for people heirs, though. So Roth accounts actually are good for people heirs to inherit. They do have rules, but different than a traditional IRA. The account still follows the 10-year distribution rule, meaning that all of it needs to be distributed by the 10th year. But RMDs each year are not required, and distributions are tax-free. So the beneficiaries would be able to make decisions on whether or not to take that out of the account or let it grow for 10 years tax-free and then have it tax-free at the end. So that's a good area for the inherited Roth IRA. The next one is kingdom beneficiaries. So people heirs aren't the only heir we want to speak about. And this is where I'm going to include Uncle Sam here. Uncle Sam is, the government, and taxes is another, and specifically built into the rules of a traditional IRA regarding people beneficiaries. So this happens, Uncle Sam is involved when people beneficiaries inherit a inherited IRA. So after the death of the second spouse, beneficiaries of an IRA will have an inherited IRA with RMDs for each year and required to be fully distributed by the end of the 10th year. So unlike RMD for the original owner, which could be age 73 to 75, based off the Secure Act 2.0, inherited IRA owners will have RMDs at the age they inherited. So this involves Uncle Sam unless planning is kept for kingdom heirs. So this is where we have kingdom heirs as a planning. So if it is God's and everything is there and you want to leave some to the kingdom at your death, then this is how we can do it. Kingdom heirs, as we call them, are just qualified tax-exempt organizations listed as beneficiaries on an IRA. So we're probably going to have them as a contingent beneficiary after the primary. We can also call this a final tithe to the kingdom. So at your death, your best wishes are that it can pass that way. In an ideal situation, the estate plan would keep people heirs on Roths and taxable accounts, the accounts good for people heirs, and have kingdom heirs on traditional IRAs to bypass Uncle Sam at the death of the second spouse. So the kingdom heir will inherit the assets from the IRA and be able to distribute them without Uncle Sam's involvement because they are tax exempt. So those are some ideal situations. We like to bookend a lot of our estate planning through the beneficiary designation.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. And that's quite a mouthful. And so, if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now, the good news is you can go back and you can listen to this over and over again by getting our phone app or going to the podcast. But, if that muddies the water for you and complicates things, the easiest place to start is in prayer. Like I said, go back and ask God, what does he want you to do with the things that you don't need when you don't need them anymore? And, you can start, the first thing that we do with our clients is we do what's called a net worth worksheet. So we calculate what their total net worth is. It's a good idea to know what you're going to leave behind, and then you can move on to the next question and start thinking about how you want that. So you really need to have, in private practice, we call this kind of a blueprint, an estate blueprint. And that means just in your own words, can you describe where do you want your things to go when you don't need them anymore? And once you have that total, then you can start to work on breaking it down by percentages. And you can start to think about it. One great exercise that you can go through is to look at your current giving, of your current income. Look at your tax return. How much of your current income do you give now to the kingdom? And then you ask yourself, do you want to follow that pattern when you go home to be with the Lord? Like Jason mentioned, do you want to leave a final tithe? If so, your blueprint's going to look like just basic percentages. I want 10% to go to the kingdom, and then 90% to be split up between my people beneficiaries, and then you name those out. And once you kind of get that down by percentages, that gives you that's a great starting point to maybe go see an attorney or a legal professional to get those wishes down legally on on paper, and then to start doing those other things that he mentions, making sure that you have beneficiaries listed, because, if you do have a will, those non-probate assets that you have are not going to go according to your will. So, Jason, what happens when a client passes on and they have beneficiaries listed and their heirs come to us? What's the next step that happens there?
Oh, say that again. Cut out.
Sorry. So whenever we have a client that dies and they have beneficiaries listed on their account and their heirs contact us to let us know that they've gone home to be with the Lord, what's the next thing happen? We don't ask for their will. What do we ask for?
We ask for the beneficiary designation and everything else to confirm their ID. Right. Their ID and then the death certificate of the person that passed on. Right. And then it's an easy process from there. So, it's not a fun thing to think about. In fact, most of the conversations that we have with clients, we find that they've spent very little time thinking about it and even less time planning for it. So we just want to encourage you to consider your estate planning as a stewardship opportunity. It's about designating those things that are going to go on beyond you in the way that the Lord would have them go on. So we hope that we've encouraged you today to take pull out that estate plan and take a look at it. If you're listening on an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, we wish you a farewell today. For everyone else, though, stick around. We've got more financial issues coming up.
Each May, we celebrate Mother's Day and the gift that mothers are to us. But for many women carrying a child, motherhood feels uncertain. They're facing fear, doubt, and some are considering abortion. This May, you can help make motherhood possible by supporting Preborn. Preborn partners with clinics across the country, providing free ultrasounds and sharing the hope of Jesus Christ with women who are abortion-minded. When you give to Preborn, you're giving these women a chance to choose life. Just $28 helps a woman hear her baby's heartbeat, a powerful moment that leads 80% of mothers to choose life. And when we come together to sponsor 200 ultrasounds, we'll equip a preborn clinic with a life-saving ultrasound machine. Will you help make motherhood possible? Go to preborn.com/FISM to give today. That's preborn.com/FISM.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachOurSchools.com.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Financial Issues. Great to be here with you. I hope you enjoyed that segment with Shana and Jason. And, I do hope that you're thinking about your own estate planning. I'm in the process of doing that right now. I'm sure many of you are also. You might be several steps ahead of me in terms of years, or you might be around my age as well. But, boy, it is never too early to start thinking about that and getting the proper things in place, especially if you have young kids. It brings a peace of mind about it for sure. And it really is a stewardship issue also, folks. Perhaps at some other point we'll dive into a little bit of kind of that question of, why do estate planning if we just trust God? So perhaps we'll save that for another time. But yeah, just really appreciate Shana and Jason's wisdom on that as well. Appreciate all of your support, folks, as well for our preborn campaign. I'll give some updates on it later on in the show. We're in our final week, the home stretch. So if you're considering giving, can't encourage you enough, preborn.com/FISM. But right now, I have a special guest joining me on the program live here. We've got Joel Noble. Joel is the Director of Public Policy at Samaritan Ministries. Joel and his team doing some great work for our health freedoms. Joel, welcome back, brother. It's great to have you on the show with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get right to it here, brother. Any updates you have for us from a public policy front? I know that's a lot of what you do for Samaritan, and of course that's an important thing for us that we often don't think about as we're just trying to go about our day. If we have health needs coming up, different things like that. But there is a battle that's being fought, and you're on the front lines of it. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So we had some good news. One of the things that we worked on for decades is what we call safe harbors, and that clarifies within a state code that we're not insurance.
Great.
So it's really important to all of us that everyone understand that we're not insurance. So we have now 34 of those. We're able to get that in North Dakota's code in the last month, and just tremendous to move forward. But then on the bad side, a lot of states are looking at reporting requirements on us. And it's not so much the reporting, but it's regulatory type reporting. And in some states, even requiring, it's kind of unbelievable, but requiring us when we talk to folks to explain insurance to them and tell them, like, well, do you really want to go with healthcare sharing? Here's your insurance options, which is just so antithetical to what we do.
Absolutely. I'm sure it just undercuts everything that you guys do at the foot. But Joel, I really do appreciate what you guys are doing. Give our listeners a sense here also, Joel. It's a question that I had. Maybe we've talked about this before on the show. Why is it so important for groups like you, Samaritan and others, to be identified as not insurance? Why is that such a important thing, and perhaps something that the other side seems to want to label you as also?
Yeah. So, two reasons. One, we want folks to understand that this is just sharing, that it's ultimately just member to member helping each other, and there's really no guarantee. But members have been faithful for more than 3 decades. So, but then the other side of that is insurance comes with a lot of requirements, especially in states like California and Oregon and Illinois, even where I'm at, where they require things that are just contrary to what our members would believe, like abortion and gender affirming care, things like that. And in a lot of states, healthcare sharing, like Samaritan, is the only island of protection against those type things. In a lot of those states, if you have to go and buy insurance, your money's going towards abortion, your money's going towards gender reassignment, things like that. And you may not see it on the front end, but, because it's a big company and, they have smaller companies, but we provide that protection to our members so they know exactly where their healthcare dollars are going. And that's a lot of the pushback we get, because the other side wants, that money going towards those type of things.
Yeah. So Joel, I want to touch on something that you said in your first answer there that kind of want to continue on a little bit. And unfortunately, it is some bad news, but I'm bringing it to the attention of our audience in the hopes that we can know what's going on, to pray for you guys and support you as well. So I came across some news recently concerning there's apparently a conspiracy afoot, really interesting here, against health sharing ministries, many of them Christians, of course, from certain atheist groups, basically with a desire to keep track and tabs on healthcare sharing groups. What do we need to know about this, and why is this conspiracy of atheists doing this? And who are they also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have the American Humanist Society, and then their political arm, the Center for Free Thought. Freedom from Religion Foundation was part of this. There is actually, on the federal, it's called the Progressive Caucus, and it's legislators, congressmen and congresswomen that identify as humanists or atheists or agnostic. And they're coming in it as we just want to, folks to understand healthcare sharing and transparency. And that's sort of the, talking point to get in. But then when you listen to them, they had a 3-hour symposium at the beginning of May. And when you listen to them, they start talking about, well, they don't cover abortion. They use insurance language like cover, and they don't cover, gender affirming. And you can tell that's really what's bothering them, the fact that we have this freedom. And it's somewhat understandable because, I see this in other realms. We see this in healthcare or in homeschooling, where they realize, hey, these parents are raising these kids in the fear of the Lord, and if we don't have them in the school, we can't indoctrinate them. And and so you see that with healthcare sharing, that's like, well, if they're in this, we can't force them to pay for abortion. We can't force them to pay for these things. And so they kind of, really show their motive when they really start going. And it's really unfortunate. They're coming in, saying transparency, but then their words deceive them, when they really start talking about what's going on.
So they say transparency. I think what they really want is control. And that is a scary thing. Absolutely. Joel, how serious of a concern is this when I say the safety of health sharing groups, I'm not as concerned that you guys will go under as much as I am the safety of your own freedom to be able to continue to do what you do. How much of a concern is this?
So fortunately, a lot of these bills this last session have not, moved forward. We're able to kind of put a stop to it. But we also, are realistic that this may have just been kind of socializing these bills. Some of these states have carryover, so this is just to kind of get it out there. In the symposium, they even, mentioned a bill last year. They said we introduced this knowing it wouldn't pass, but we wanted to flesh them out to see who all these folks were. So they're in it for the long haul, and I mean, we are going to be too. And fortunately, we have kind of put a hold on it because in like Colorado, which one of the first type of these bills that passed, there's a federal lawsuit now, fighting that because it did pass a few years ago. So hopefully that kind of also gives them pause because they know that we will fight this. And it's not just Samaritan. There's a lot of other really great ministries out there, and we're coordinated together, to fight this and to stop this. And so, fortunately, God's been gracious in His providence to help this stop. And so we know it probably, won't just be this year. So we're going to be diligent, to keep fighting it each year.
Absolutely. Joel, I know there are several other good health sharing ministries out there, and it seems like you guys are coming together to fight this, as you said, which is great. What are some of the specific things that you're doing?
So the federal lawsuit in Colorado is through our Detroit Association. There was also, unrelated to this reporting, but the state of New Mexico had kind of systematically started shutting down some of the smaller ministries. And we decided at Samaritan on our own, we weren't going to wait for them to show up at our door, that we were going to proactively, say, look, this is, we're doing this as a demonstration of our faith. This isn't, just like a free market solution. We do this because we believe that Christians should help other Christians. And so this is a violation of our religious freedom, to not be able to do this. So we proactively are fighting in New Mexico. And then in the other states, we just have, really good folks on the ground that are helping us. And it's getting the word out like this, that, because it's easy when you just say transparency, because we're for transparency.
Sure.
There's dozens of different ways that we say we're not insurance, and we're all for that. We want folks to understand how much we share each month so they can know we have a 990. So we're very transparent, with what's going on. But when it gets into that regulatory thing, when they start saying, oh, no, you have to operate like insurance, then it, destroys the ministerial nature of what we do. So, we're going to fight that.
Yeah, amen. That's awesome that you guys are doing that, Joel. That's great. I do want to close on some good news quickly here. Obviously, under a Trump administration now, several months in, I'd imagine and hope that Samaritan is able to enjoy some more protection perhaps than under the previous administration. Is the Trump administration making things better for you guys in general? How's that playing out?
Yeah. So we're very optimistic about it, at least in the legislative realm. There's a couple really good bills out there. There's one that would get us into, it's a section called 213D, and it's where you actually are able to deduct your insurance premiums or your medical needs if you itemize. And so they're looking at a third category for healthcare sharing so that our folks would be able to, if they itemize, to be able to deduct what they're sharing. There's a great, bill out of Texas for HSAs, and so it's things like that. And those are things that maybe even could be done from the executive branch through executive orders. And in the first administration, they looked at that, and it just didn't get signed. Yeah. So we're optimistic that maybe we can see it that way too.
Joel, that's awesome, man. We appreciate you so much. Appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Real quickly here, Joel, how can we pray for Samaritan Ministries?
Yeah. So just pray for protection. Yeah. And definitely these lawsuits for the Lord's favor. Yep. And then really just for our members. And they're every single day. There's thousands of medical needs, and that's really just some of the tornadoes, things like that. Some of the things that are going on that are affecting our members, just like absolutely.
Joel, we appreciate you so much, folks. Check them out, SamaritanMinistries.org. We'll be right back after this break. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
May is a time to honor mothers, their strength, sacrifice, and unconditional love. But for many women, motherhood feels uncertain and overwhelming. Fear and doubt leave them considering abortion. You can give hope. Just $28 helps a woman hear her baby's heartbeat, a powerful moment that leads 80% of mothers to choose life. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give today.
I remember my life before I met Jesus. I was most of the time afraid. I remember one of my teachers gave the classroom an invitation for Crossroads. When they talked to me about the love of God, I felt a sort of peace in my heart. I learned how to pray to God. It helps me through my day. I will commit myself to learn more about God's Word, to be able to share the gospel to others. Jesus has been a big impact in our family. Now we go to church every Sunday. I see more happiness and less arguments. God's love is so perfect, I will not change God for anything.
To help reach more kids like Louise with the life-changing hope of the gospel, visit reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed that interview there with Joel. Again, SamaritanMinistries.org if you're interested in having a little freedom over your health care. And it really is health sharing. And boy, great to hear what they're doing, fighting for our freedoms on the public policy front. We got them. We got Twyla also fighting for our freedoms with CCH Freedom. So great to have those allies there in this fight for sure. On the chat this morning, Daryl, good to see you. Matt as well. James, John, George, good to see you, brother. So many as well. Ann, good to see you. A lot of you have shared your service in the military, so I want to thank each and every one of you. I know Stephen said you've got 2 sons serving in the Army right now. Stephen, thank you as a parent and your sons for their service as well. I believe Nelson shared as well, 6-year veteran. Nelson, thank you. Of course, our own Uncle John served in the military as well. So just want to thank all of you for your faithful service. Those of you who have served or have family who served as well. What a tremendous sacrifice.
And I put a shout out there to our very own Elijah Kelly as well.
Cannot forget Elijah. Thank you, brother, for your faithful service. Great stuff there. Yeah, good to see so many of you on the chat this morning. Missed you over the long weekend, so it's great to be back here with you. Let's get to the Ag Report here, and then we'll talk about a couple more things before we close out our show. We'll hear from Craig Haugaard with today's Ag Update. Right now, here he is.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for May 27th. Corn pushed lower on Friday as President Trump threatened a 50% tariff on EU effective on June 1st. As a result, July corn was 3.5 cents lower, ending the day at $4.59.5 per bushel. Soybeans saw half of the weekly gains erased with Friday's action. On the export front, China continues to transition to South America. We had no sales coming from the U.S. last week, probably the final signal that Brazil has their full focus on China for now. Brazil has a clear advantage versus the U.S. in that basis on Friday, and Brazil was steady to slightly weaker. July beans finished today 7.25 cents lower at 10.60 Wheat futures were mixed, while most of the egg complex was weaker with the threat of EU tariffs hitting the U.S. markets. Now, U.S. wheat values are now on par with Russian FOB values, and that should garner some further new crop export business here in the Western Hemisphere. Friday's closing bell saw Minneapolis July wheat actually 6.25 cents higher at 6.06 Kansas City dropped by $0.0125 to close at 5.38 and Chicago was 2 cents lower at 5.42 Cotton futures kind of are basically a broken record as they just remain range bound and chopping. Friday saw July futures 48 points higher for the session as they ended the day at 66.11. Livestock futures were mixed. We had August live cattle and nickel lower at $210.45 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were 60 cents higher as they ended the session at $300.37.5 per hundred. And finally, July lean hog futures dropped by 50 cents as they ended the session at $101.55 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures had an extremely active week, but ended the week very nearly where we had begun the week. Friday saw the market close down 49 points in the June futures as they settled the week at 1934. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
All right, folks, so I told you I'd give an update on how we are doing with preborn. I'm pleased to tell you, folks, we had a good weekend. We're up to about 55% of the funds that we need raised, 55% there. It's sitting at about $153,000 as of this morning. That's the equivalent of about 27 and a half ultrasound machines. Again, our goal is 50. So we're still a little ways off. And of course, it is crunch time. This is the final weekend of this campaign. So you do the math. We need about, I'd say, $130,000 more or so.
We need to start playing the final countdown.
That's exactly right. We're going to start playing. That's
so people know.
That'll be our bumper music in the final countdown. Just so you know, we have until this Saturday, I believe it is May 31st. So yeah, folks, I can't stress enough. If you are feeling the Lord's tugging on your heart to give to this campaign, please be obedient. The amount is between you and the Lord. I will tell you that $28 provides one ultrasound scan, which could be a life-saving scan. You can do $140 for 5 scans. You can do $5,600, which underwrites a full ultrasound machine. Those machines go for anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. $5,600 will buy an ultrasound machine, and that machine will be placed into a preborn clinic. And let me say as well, every single dollar that we raise is given back to FISM as a gift at the end of this as well. So can't stress this enough, folks. If you're thinking about giving to the campaign, some people have asked, should I give some money to FISM, some to preborn? Don't give anything to FISM, none to FISM. Don't give anything to us. Give it all to preborn. Give 100% of it to preborn because FISM will will then get 100% of it as well. So your gift will essentially be doubled in that way. So if you love FISM, give to preborn. If you love preborn, give to preborn. We've been saying that. We'll continue to say it.
The classic win-wins.
That's right. It really is a win-win. It absolutely is. If you love saving babies, if you hate abortion, if you love the gospel, if you hate evil, if you love Jesus Christ, I can't think of a better ministry for you to give to. So preborn.com/FISM. You go to our website, financialissues.org, and just click the preborn banner. That's where you can see our percentage bar that we have up there as well. So speaking of which, Sam, I saw what seems to be good news here that we're seeing from a political front when we talk about abortion. What have you got for us?
Yes, that's right. In the House's big, beautiful bill, it looks like there is, in fact, a measure to defund Planned Parenthood. That is something we weren't entirely sure about last week when it first passed. But yes, indeed, it appears that's the case. And now a group of Christian and conservative leaders are now desperately urging the Senate to pass the bill, keeping that proposal in there, that proposal to defund Planned Parenthood and really abortion providers in general, stop funding them with taxpayer dollars. Some major names signing that, including Lila Rose of Live Action, women's sports activist Riley Gaines, and detransitioner activist Chloe Cole, among many, many more. The letter points out that Planned Parenthood is guilty of providing transgender treatments to kids as young as 16, which is just horrific to think about, as well as killing 400,000 babies each and every year. The budget would also bar federal dollars from funding transgender procedures as well. So that is relevant to the conversation. This also comes as Planned Parenthood received to $800 million in tax dollars the last couple years.
Yeah. Boy, folks, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's a good chance that a lot of you out there listening don't hate Planned Parenthood as much as you should. We should be so actively against this organization, this godless, worthless, demonic, satanic, evil, straight from the pit of hell organization that's main purpose is to kill children, and they also trans them on the side if they make it out of the womb. This organization is evil. I don't mind saying that it's evil. It's purely evil. It's run by Satan. It's run by the Church of Satan. And praise God, we win because our captain is Jesus Christ, who has conquered their captain, Satan. So I want to be part of that victory, and I'm sure you do as well. We touched on it at length during the program last week. Just let me remind you, if you're one of those people who assume that Roe v. Wade's overturn was the finish line, that was the end of the battle, you're out of your mind, you got to get back in the fight. The fight is only heating up. It really is. The fact that our tax dollar funds are funding this is egregious. The fact that Planned Parenthood gets so much in donations is egregious. Folks, how you steward your money, it matters. It comes from a standpoint of life and death. How you steward your money matters. That's why our strategy is so vital. We don't want a single cent of your dollars being used to fund abortions, your investor dollars. We also don't want Planned Parenthood to receive another cent of donorship dollars or of tax dollars. So we are in favor of this, absolutely. I'm so grateful, Sam, that these necessary conversations are happening.
That's right.
I mean, this is amazing.
I didn't even get to mention, this would be devastating to Planned Parenthood, which would be awesome if that's the case. Planned Parenthood is saying it would have to shut down nearly 200 centers, so that's roughly a third of them if this budget does in fact pass and they're no longer getting those tax dollars. So all I can say is in this case, from Planned Parenthood's lips to God's ears, because I really pray that's the case, if they have to shut down a whole third of their centers.
And just imagine, Sam, what's happening here. So you've got this bill that could pass, that could shut down a third of those, and then you've got preborn coming in, batting cleanup for the kill shot. Dan Steiner's mission, one of his missions with preborn, is to put Planned Parenthood out of business. And boy, with the growth that we've seen from preborn over the last couple years, of which financial issues has been one of the chief catalysts, we may see that happen in our lifetime. I say, may God will it to happen. May this happen in our lifetime. If not my lifetime, then in Josiah's lifetime. But I do hope to live to see the day when Planned Parenthood gets put out of business, folks. That's our hope and prayer. It's not our only hope and prayer, of course. Our ultimate hope and prayer is that we want mothers and fathers to come to the gospel of Jesus Christ, to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And we want these babies who are in danger of dying, being killed, to see the light of day so that they too can come to know, love, and serve Jesus Christ. That's our goal. So, boy, I really would encourage you, join us in this campaign. once again, it's preborn.com/FISM, preborn.com/FISM. All right, folks, let's switch gears here as we close our show. The markets finished Friday. They looked to salvage what had been kind of a bummer week up to that point. By midday, they were moderately down. Late afternoon, it was the same. That's how they finished. The Dow finished 2/3% down, Same with the S&P 500. And the NASDAQ was right at a 1 full percentage point down. All three indices finished below 2% for the week. So not a fantastic week for the major indices, but nothing to sneeze at. They were closed yesterday for the holiday, the Memorial Day holiday. This morning, they were really having a party on the latest tariff news. Trump announced over the weekend a delay on the EU tariff, which the markets just loved.
July 9th, right, Seth?
I believe so. Yeah. I believe it's July 9th.
Craig had said June 1st, but I think it has since been updated.
It has since been updated. Yep. So which once again, the markets are just going to love that even more because it's more time. So right now, the Dow Jones is up just below a full percent. The S&P 500 is hanging around 1.25%, and the NASDAQ shooting up over 1.5 percentage points. What to expect this week, folks? Really the big thing to look at when we're coming to earnings season. The de facto final week is this week. Tomorrow we get NVIDIA's earnings reports after the bell, so we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. Costco and Dell report this week as well as Salesforce, but really not much else. NVIDIA is that final one to come here. Boy, great show. I appreciate all of you so much, and God willing, we'll do it again next time. Until then, remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with what God has given to us. We'll see you next time on Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.